All the fashion insiders, whether it's buyers, editors, journalists, they're all talking about Auralee, and it's popping up at the hottest boutiques everywhere. In addition, Auralee has done so many cool collabs, whether it's Tekla, New Balance, or even Kiss. But what's so cool about Auralee? The clothes just look very plain and normal. So why are people so excited about this? To really understand the soul, the essence of Auralee, let's dive into a journey about the material known as baby cashmere. So you're probably aware that cashmere is extremely expensive. It's a luxury fabric. But there's an even more expensive version of cashmere called baby cashmere. It's literally made from a baby goat under a year old. You can only get 30 grams of it, just 30 grams. That's like a single ounce for you freedom people, from a single baby goat, and nearly all of it is bought by these big luxury houses. The year is 2016. Our protagonist, Mr. Ryota Iwai, had just only founded Auralee a year ago. And as an extremely young brand without trust or reputation, it's extremely hard to get your hands on such a luxurious, such a rare fabric. At this point, most brands would probably just give up and buy a much more common, much more available fabric off the shelf. But Iwai-san did something different. You see, Auralee just does not use off-the-shelf fabrics. It's pretty common for a younger brand and even older brands to use off-the-shelf fabrics. Once in a while, they might work with a fabric mill to tweak an existing fabric to make a custom fabric. But Auralee does way more than that. It won't just work with a mill to weave a fabric from scratch. It'll actually go to the yarn spinners and spin an entire yarn from scratch and then weave that into a fabric. So for Iwai-san, giving up and buying an off-the-shelf fabric was never a choice. There was only one choice left, and Iwai-san took it. He traveled all the way across the world to Mongolia, to places with dirt roads, to meet these nomadic goat herders, and through his knowledge and love of this material, bonding and understanding the livelihoods of these extremely hardworking goat herders living off the land, he was able to convince them to reserve a portion of their baby cashmere every year just for Iwai-san, just for Auralee. So now that Iwai-san had the baby cashmere, he has to turn it into a yarn. For that, he decided to leave it undyed to show the original, beautiful, deep color of the baby cashmere, and to preserve as much of its natural softness as possible. And using this yarn, Iwai-san made this beautiful knit polo shirt. Just from the pictures alone, you can tell that it's extremely soft and it has this beautiful drape to it. If you look closely at the surface, you can tell that it has a sort of sheen to it, and a very beautiful depth to the color. It took a whole journey just to make this one sweater, and believe it or not, Iwai-san has done this over and over again, traveling to various destinations such as Australia and Peru to make the best clothing using the best materials. So what inspired Iwai-san to go through all of this to make a single piece of clothing? Iwai-san's first introduction to fashion was working at a vintage store during high school in his hometown of Kobe, and during that experience, that taught him how hard it was, how much work it took to sell a single piece of clothing. He recalls that during high school, he was a fan of very minimalist designers during the 2000s, designers such as APC and Helmut Lang. That experience really inspired him to make his own clothes, and after graduating from university, he went back to Bunka Fashion College to study design. Then after graduating from Bunka, Iwai-san then worked for various apparel companies in Japan for a few years, before in 2015 he started Auralee as an in-house brand for the textile maker Chillhop, who by the way also sponsored Captain Sunshine. And just to add a note here, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, there are some now very famous French luxury houses that have also been started this way. From what I've been able to gather, Auralee has since been spun off into its own company. And all that hard work paid off. In 2018, Auralee won the Fashion Prize of Tokyo. By the way, the Fashion Prize of Tokyo is a pretty big deal because how it works is they select the most promising Japanese brand and they send them to Paris. They give them enough money and support to do a Paris runway show, which Auralee successfully did for 2020 AW in Paris. So one interesting tidbit is that Iwai-san has mentioned in previous interviews that he's inspired by the Korean-Japanese artist known as 𝗖𝗵𝗽𝗀𝗂𝗋. This little hint that Iwai-san gave away is actually the key to understanding Auralee. 𝗖𝗵𝗽𝗀𝗂𝗋 is famous for being the prominent member of a Japanese group of artists known as monoha. What monoha means quite literally is the school of things. And the philosophy behind monoha is very much a reaction and the antithesis to modernism. Oh, hold on there. What the hell is modernism? Well, don't worry, I previously made a video about Reiko Akubo and her modernist approach to fashion. Anyways, back to the show. Monoha is instead proposing a traditional Japanese, a very Zen-rooted approach to art. As the title suggests, it's about the school of things. Unlike modernist art, things are not designed, they just come as they are. If we look at Liu Fan, one of his most famous works here, one of his sculptures at the Guggenheim in 2011, he's just holding a regular old rock and he's using that regular old rock to smash a regular old mirror on the ground. I find that Liu Fan's works are more sensory, and when you're there in that space, you can sense the physicality of the rock, and you can sense the physicality of the mirror that's broken. And you're being confronted with the question of the relationship between the two items, and also your relationship as a viewer to these things. So Monoha as a school of art is primarily appreciated through your senses, not through your intellect, and it's about the relationships of things. Similarly, Iwai-san has mentioned that he doesn't want to make clothing that's overly designed. He wants to make very simple, very easy to wear things that blend into your everyday life and can blend into your wardrobe. In other words, it's about the relationship of these pieces of clothing to your entire wardrobe and to yourself as well. And similar to Monoha, a lot of Auralee's clothing is very much sensory. The fabrics, materials, you really have to touch it, you have to sense it to understand how amazing it is. And personally, I can relate to that. I remember I first saw Auralee around 2018 or so. My first impression was, well, this is just plain old clothing, what's so special about this? It wasn't until later on when I finally got to see Auralee in a store close to me. I remember touching some of their shirts, their very famous Sphinx cotton shirts, which are very, very fine cotton that feels like silk. And their cashmere sweaters, they are so soft and so creamy, it's absolutely amazing. I was just thumbing through the rack and I went upon Auralee and I was like, whoa, what is this? This stuff is so different, it feels way better than everything else. And in fact, later on, I had a chance to try out the rose sweaters at another department store close to me. And when I touched those, I was immediately just disappointed. I mean, compared to Auralee, I hate to say it, but it was worse. The rose sweater was perfectly fine. I mean, it was pretty good quality from what I could tell, but it didn't have that kind of creaminess, that kind of softness, the drape of the Auralee sweater, the one that really blew me away. If you look at the prices, the Auralee sweater is around $500 while the rose is around $1,500. And of course, if you buy Auralee in Japan, you can get it for much cheaper. So you're paying more than 3 times the price for something that's actually worse in quality. Of course, this is my own personal opinion with a sample size of 1, so take it for what it's worth. And this is what's so great about Auralee. Their clothing just feels honest, like the quality is good and the pricing doesn't feel like an insult to your dignity. Alright, so that's all nice and good, but how do I wear Auralee? Well, the good thing is, you can wear Auralee in any way you want, because everything is just basic, and not in a bad way. I feel like Auralee is one of the few brands where you can just look around on their e-commerce site and look at the official styling there, and that'll give you honestly a pretty good idea about how to style Auralee. And really, you could just buy anything from Auralee and it'll fit in seamlessly with your normal wardrobe. In terms of design cues, a lot of it feels like it was inspired by early 2000s minimalist and luxury brands, which is pretty on point considering how Iwai-san was inspired by APC and Helmut Lang. In terms of sizing, I find that Auralee doesn't tend to do these very trendy, wide oversized fits. Instead, I feel like Auralee mostly just does very normal, relaxed, straight fits. But there are people in the Japanese fashion community that size up for a more wider, more oversized look, and it works there as well. And for color, while most of the items are offered in monochromes or very neutral colors, Auralee does tend to play around with some more interesting colors like pastel hues or very vivid colors. And if you wanted to check it out for yourself, which I strongly recommend, even if you're not buying anything, just touching the fabric is an education in itself about what quality really is. Auralee has a list of stockists on their site and they have quite a lot of international stores carrying them now. Even if you don't live in Japan, there's probably a store pretty close to you. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. 𝗵𝗽𝗀𝗃 out.